Good afternoon, morning. My name is Shirley Harvey, and I was the city council person for the city that had most public housing in it, in the 6th district. I'm afraid that this is not going to work, especially for the people, if the people are not here, and they're not here today. If you're not going to have a meeting where you include those people, you're going to find that the situation may be detrimental for them, and they will really have no say-so. If you're going to do this, or you're going to try to do something to help them, I can give you lots of ways to help them so that they can actually afford housing that is not affordable. But you know, the government doesn't seem to hear that. They just seem to want to take from these people and put them wherever they want to. Like, you don't have any say-so because we are over you, you have no money, and so I can put you wherever I please. And I think that's wrong without including them in this conversation. And if you go forward without them, you know, something else is going to happen, because it's not going to happen well if you don't include them.
Thank you. I think we're taking that away as a really strong theme from today. Yes, sir.